The jungle is trying to kill him, not the Japanese. The jungle itself. The roots that grab his boots. The elephant grass that slices his forearms open to the bone. The Philippine heat, 103 degrees in the shade, pressing down on him like a physical weight, like a hand on the back of his neck trying to push his face into the mud. Private First Class John Sjogren doesn't notice any of it anymore. He is 20 yards from an enemy emplacement, his belly flat against the red volcanic soil of Negros Island. And the only thing in his universe is the rectangular slot of darkness cut into a wall of woven bamboo and packed earth 30 feet ahead of him. From that slot, a Japanese Type 96 light machine gun has been firing for the last 40 minutes. It has already killed 2 men from Item Company. It has stopped an entire U.S. Army infantry company cold on a jungle ridge in the Philippines. Not in 1942, not at Guadalcanal when the war was young and the Army was still learning, but in May of 1945, even with Germany already surrendered and the war down to its last brutal inches. There are at least 7 fortified emplacements in the position ahead of him. He knows this now, though this morning's briefing said 3. His entire company has been ordered to pull back. He did not pull back. His BR, the M1918A2 Browning automatic rifle, 20 pounds loaded, be fed with a 20-round box magazine of .30-06 M2 armor-piercing ammunition, is cradled in his arms the way another man might hold something he cannot set down. The M2 AP rounds in those magazines are not standard issue for this kind of work. Someone made a decision before dawn to load his magazines with the armor-piercing variant instead of ball. In the next 4 hours, that decision will either save his life or it won't matter at all. The machine gun stops, and a beat of silence falls over the ridge like something dropped. In that silence, John Sjogren throws a grenade and comes up running. What happens next? What one American soldier does alone against a fortified position that stopped a full infantry company is not in any tactical manual. It has no name in the Army's official doctrine. But the men of the Imperial Japanese Army's 77th Infantry Regiment who survived the afternoon would give it a name, and according to testimony gathered during prisoner interrogations the following month, they called it Mori no Kaminari. Forest Thunder. This is how one man earned that name, and this is why it cost him everything except his life. John Sjogren was from Rockford, Michigan, a small town set along the Rogue River, the kind of place where the high school football team was the biggest event of autumn, and everybody knew everybody's father. He was 22 years old in the spring of 1945, and not especially large. Not a man who stood out in a crowd or made speeches or filled a room with presence. The men of Item Company would later describe him the same way. Quiet, deliberate, someone who thought before he spoke and only spoke when he had something to say. His platoon sergeant, a man named Kowalski, who had been with the 40th Division since California, used to say that Sjogren had the eyes of someone who was always calculating distance, looking at the terrain between where he stood and where he needed to be, always working the angles. He had enlisted in 1943, a year out of high school, when the draft was sweeping through Michigan like a second harvest. He could have waited. He chose not to. He never offered a reason that anyone recorded. He was assigned the BAR because his platoon sergeant recognized something in him during training at Camp Cook. Steadiness. The BAR was not a spray weapon. It was not meant for frantic close-quarter hosing of a room. Used properly, the M1918A2 was a precision automatic weapon. a walking fire platform that could suppress an enemy position with the kind of controlled, rhythmic accuracy that required a cool head under fire. You had to be able to hear the weapon's cadence inside your own heartbeat and not confuse the two. Sjogren could do that. Most men couldn't. In the months since the 40th Division had landed on Negros Island in March of 1945, he had become the kind of soldier other soldiers noticed, not because he was loud or reckless, but because when things went wrong, which on Negros they went wrong constantly, he got quieter. His hands got more deliberate, as if fear was not absent in him but simply redirected, filed away somewhere beneath the surface until the situation resolved itself. He carried one personal thing that no one in his platoon had ever seen him without. A photograph folded in half, tucked inside the breast pocket of his fatigues beneath his field dressing. He had shown it once in a moment on the transport ship somewhere in the Philippine Sea, to a kid from Ohio who was scared and needed someone to talk to. And it was a photograph of a woman, his mother, he said, standing in front of a white clapboard house in Rockford, squinting slightly in the summer sun. He had promised her he was coming home. In the last months of the Pacific War, a promise like that was not given lightly. On Negros Island in May of 1945, keeping it would require everything he had. The briefing came at 0500 on May 23rd, conducted by candlelight in a Philippine farmhouse 3 kilometers south of the ridge, eaten with a hand-drawn map tacked to a bamboo wall and mosquitoes thick enough to chew. Item Company's objective was a ridge complex designated Hill 330 on operational maps. Jungle-covered high ground controlling the road south toward Bacolod, which the 40th Division's 160th Infantry Regiment had been pushing toward for weeks. Japanese forces had been yielding ground slowly, contesting every ridge. Hill 330 was their latest anchor. An intelligence from Filipino guerrilla scouts put the Japanese force at one reinforced squad, 8 to 12 men, holding 3 mutually supporting emplacements near the crest. The scouts had counted campfires 2 nights prior and estimated the garrison from cooking smoke. The route of advance was a dry stream bed running northwest, reported clear of mines and enemy observation. Item Company would move in 2 columns. 1st and 2nd platoons up the stream bed, the 3rd platoon swinging wide to flank. Total force 62 men. Estimated time to secure the crest, 2 hours. It was wrong. All of it was wrong. Item Company stepped off at 0630. They reached the base of the ridge in 40 minutes. The stream bed looked exactly as the scouts described: rutted dry clay, overhanging vines, the smell of rotting vegetation, and standing water. The point man of 1st Platoon, a corporal named Dellinger, who had taken 11 steps into the stream bed when the ground came apart. Not a mine. Something worse. A concealed trench connecting 2 of the emplacements. A communication trench dug 3 feet deep and covered with bamboo matting and leaf litter. Invisible from any angle until you were standing on top of it. The Japanese had been there for weeks. Not a reinforced squad. A full reinforced platoon. 30 to 40 men, with 7 prepared fighting positions, overlapping fields of fire, D3 Type 96 light machine guns, and a 70mm battalion gun positioned on the reverse slope to provide indirect fire along the primary approach. The 3 campfires the scouts had counted were a ruse. The garrison had been cooking in one location and fighting from another. The stream bed was not a route, it was a kill zone. 1st Platoon lost 4 men in the first 90 seconds, and the Type 96 on the left flank caught the column in enfilade, firing along the length of the formation rather than into its face, and the effect was catastrophic. Men dove for cover into the stream bed walls, pressing themselves into the clay, trying to make themselves smaller than the bullets looking for them. Sjogren, carrying the bar in the center of 2nd Platoon, and heard the ambush erupt, and knew immediately from the volume of fire that the number they'd been given was wrong by a factor of 3. He had counted 4 distinct automatic weapons firing from different positions. Intelligence had reported 1. Then the radio crackled. Captain Lawson's voice, compressed and static-streaked on the SCR-300. All elements, pull back to the line of departure. I say again, pull back. We are calling for artillery prep before re-engaging. I'd acknowledge. Artillery. 20 minutes at minimum to redirect fire support. Another 40 minutes to prep the ridge with enough rounds to neutralize 7 prepared positions. Item company falling back down the stream bed under fire. The wounded men in the clay who couldn't move, pulling back how exactly? Sjogren looked at Corporal Dellinger, who was 15 feet ahead of him, pressing a field dressing against his own shoulder with one hand, and firing his M1 Garand one-handed with the other. He looked at the stream bed exit to his right, already under fire from the Type 96 on the left flank. He looked at the BAR in his hands. 1st and 2nd platoons began moving back. Men low-crawled, dragged their wounded, disappeared into the vegetation. The fire from the ridge pursued them, then slackened as the Japanese tracked the retreating company. Sjogren did not go back. He had already moved 20 meters forward while his platoon pulled back, and he was past the point where the stream bed turned, past the corner of cover that separated the approach from the objective. If he moved back now, he would cross open ground that the Type 96 was already watching. Going backward was more dangerous than going forward, at least that was what he told himself. The truth was simpler. 2 men were dead. The position was still there, and someone had to do something about it. He was alone. 62 men had become 1. And the radio on Captain Lawson's frequency was still crackling with the order to withdraw. He wasn't following it. He pressed his hands flat against the wet earth until they stopped shaking. Then he began to crawl. The first emplacement is 20 yards ahead. Bamboo logs stacked 3 feet high, the gaps packed with volcanic clay and reinforced with sandbags. The firing slot is 20 inches wide and 8 inches tall. Enough for a rifle barrel, enough for a machine gun muzzle, not enough for a grenade thrown at a bad angle. Sjogren counts the firing cycles of the Type 96 inside the position, 30 rounds per magazine. The gun fires in bursts of 5 to 7. It has been firing for 40 minutes. The crew is disciplined, conserving ammunition, tracking movement with precision. These are not poorly trained garrison troops. These men have been fighting since China, possibly since Manchuria. Their fields of fire have been pre-registered, and they know where every shadow falls on this ridge. He counts to the 3rd burst and crawls forward 15 feet in the silence that follows. The stream bed curves slightly to his left, putting a shallow rise of clay and bamboo roots between him and the 2nd emplacement. He uses it. He's belly down, moving on elbows and toes, the bar cradled on his forearms, barrel pointed forward. The M2AP rounds in his magazine are designed to penetrate a 1/2-inch steel plate at 100 yards. Against bamboo and packed clay at 20 yards. They will go through the wall of that emplacement like it isn't there. He is at 15 yards when the jungle comes apart to his right. Not from the emplacement, from the ground. A spider hole. A single-man fighting position dug 18 inches deep, covered with a woven bamboo lid that matched the jungle floor perfectly. Opens 3 yards to his right and slightly behind him. The Japanese soldier inside it has been lying still, waiting. He'd watching the stream bed for exactly this scenario. A lone attacker who has bypassed the main position and is crawling toward the bunker's blind side. The muzzle of a Type 38 rifle appears, the click of a bolt cycling home, the shadow of a man rising from the earth itself. You have to understand what this means. At 3 yards in heavy vegetation, a rifle shot at a prone target is not a difficult shot. 3 yards is less than the distance from one end of a dining room table to the other. At that range, the Type 38 6.5mm round will go through a man completely and still have energy to spare. There is no margin for error. There is no time to think. Sjogren rolled, not away from the position, toward it. Right. He rolled hard to his right, tucking the bar against his chest, covering the 18 inches of jungle floor between his body and the spider hole in a fraction of a second that his body executed before his brain had finished processing the threat. When the Type 38 fired, the round passed through the space where his left shoulder had been a tenth of a second before. And then he was on top of the position, his left forearm driving down hard, the rifle knocked sideways and the bar barrel at contact distance with the bunker lid. He fired once, then twice. Then it was quiet. He lay still for 3 seconds, listening. Then he rose to his knees. He had used 2 rounds of M2AP. He had 18 left in the magazine, yet he had 5 more magazines in his belt pouches. That was 118 rounds total. For what he had just seen of this position, 7 emplacements, 30 to 40 men, 3 machine guns, it was not enough. What he did in the next 90 seconds made no tactical sense to anyone who hadn't been crawling that jungle floor for the last 6 months. And until you understand what he had already figured out about the M2AP round and what it did to bamboo fortifications at close range, something no one else on that ridge had time to calculate. Nothing about the next 4 hours would make any sense at all. He is back on his feet. The Type 96 in the first emplacement has not registered the pistol-quiet sound of 2 AP rounds fired at ground level over the ridge noise. He moves. The 20 yards closes to 15, to 10. Yet he pulls a Mark II grenade from his jacket, releases the spoon, counts 2, throws it through the firing slot at a flat angle. Not a lob, a throw, the way you throw a baseball, flat and hard and with conviction. The grenade detonates inside the emplacement. He is moving before the concussion wave finishes. He's through the entrance gap in the back wall before the smoke clears the bar at his hip and the 9 men who were inside the emplacement are accounted for. He does not stop, and he steps out the backside of the position and immediately goes flat again, because the second emplacement is 40 yards northeast and they heard the grenade. Cost, 1 grenade. 1 M2AP magazine expended covering the approach. His right palm is cut from the bamboo edge of the entrance gap and he won't know it until tomorrow. The second emplacement is heavier built than the first. Triple-layer bamboo logs, clay packed to a foot thick, and ball ammunition would deflect off that wall at a shallow angle. He has seen it happen twice on this island. A round that deflects into the jungle has killed no one. The M2AP round does not deflect. At the corner of a bunker, where bamboo logs stack perpendicular and the clay packing thins, the armor-piercing core punches through the wall the way a finger goes through wet paper. He has been watching this for 6 months. The Japanese build their bunkers with confidence in the walls, and they do not expect the walls to stop being walls. He crawls to 40 yards, braces the bar, fires a 6-round burst into the northeast corner junction, and moves immediately right, 3 full rolls, because the burst will draw fire. The return fire comes from the third emplacement, not the second. The second position's crew is dealing with something the wall was not supposed to allow. He loads his third magazine. Between the second and third emplacement there is a structure, and he almost misses it. A nipa hut, bamboo walls, palm thatch roof, that does not appear on any intelligent sketch. It is tucked into a depression between two fighting positions, positioned so that the Japanese defenders on either side can use it as visual cover, their emplacements flanking it. It may have been a farm worker's shelter before the Japanese built their positions around it. The door moves. A face appears in the gap, then another, then a hand, small, in a child's hand, gripping the door frame. Filipino civilians. A woman in her 30s, face drawn tight with fear that has probably been there for weeks. Beside her, two children, a girl of perhaps 8 and a boy younger than that. Behind them, the shadows suggest more people inside. Farm laborers probably, trapped inside the Japanese perimeter when the fortifications went up around them, unable to leave without crossing the fields of fire that now surround the position on 3 sides. In the third emplacement is 40 feet past them. The fourth is 60 feet to their right. He stares at those faces for a fraction of a second that contains an entire argument. The direct line to emplacement 3 runs 15 feet from the hut's east wall. The assault he has been running, quick, violent, keep moving, goes straight past them. One stray burst from the position he's about to hit, one round that exits at the wrong angle, one grenade thrown by a dying Japanese defender from emplacement 4. And those children cease to exist. He changes the approach. The new route swings 60 feet west, adding distance and exposure, taking him across a section of ground that the fourth emplacement has partial observation over. There is no good cover on the west approach. He will be crossing 40 feet of thinned-out jungle with a 30-degree angle shot available to any Japanese soldier watching from position 4 who happens to be looking in the right direction. He goes anyway. It takes 4 minutes instead of 90 seconds. Somewhere in those 4 minutes, a burst of fire from position 3 stitches through the jungle 5 feet to his left. The vegetation absorbs it. He flattens, waits, moves again. By the time he reaches the angle he needs for position 3, he has a wound in his left forearm from a bamboo splinter driven by the close burst. Minor, bleeding, ignored. He engages position 3 from the west. 2 grenades and a magazine of M2AP. 3 minutes of work. The hut to the east has not been touched. The woman in the doorway has disappeared inside. He hopes that means she's taken the children to the floor. Cost, 2 grenades, 1 full magazine, each 1 forearm that is now slick with blood inside his jacket sleeve. He does not think about the children. He cannot afford to think about the children right now. He will think about them when it is over. He loads his 4th magazine. At the edge of position 3's cleared zone, he does something that no trained soldier would do. Something that should guarantee his death. Instead of pressing the assault on position 4, in which he has partially suppressed and which has 20 seconds of disorientation left before its crew recovers. He stops. He sets the bar down. He sits with his back against the bunker wall and puts his hands in his lap. He sits there for 90 seconds and does not move. From the outside, it looks like a man who is broken, a man who has simply run out. It is not that. But the explanation for what it actually is will have to wait. The jungle breathes. Somewhere below the ridge, the item company is reorganizing. The artillery mission has been called in. In 30 to 40 minutes, shells will begin falling on this ridge, on the positions he has already taken, on the position he is crouched against, on the position still ahead, on the hut with the civilians in it. He knows this. It is one of the things he is calculating. His forearm has stopped hurting, which means the nerves have shut off, which means the wound is worse than it felt, and his throat is completely dry. He drank his last water at 800 and it is now past noon. His hands, when he holds them up, carry a fine, steady vibration he cannot will away. He thinks about the men who retreated down the stream bed, Dellinger with his one-handed shooting, the 4 men who didn't get up. He thinks about Captain Lawson's voice on the radio. Pull back, and what it means that he is still here. The mission has been officially suspended. What he is doing is not authorized, and if he dies in the next 20 minutes, he will have died completing an assault the United States Army had formally called off. He arrives at the same conclusion he arrived at when he heard the order and kept crawling. The objective is still there. The artillery mission is coming, and those civilians have nowhere to go. He puts his hand over his breast pocket. The photograph is there. He can feel the shape of it through the fabric. A white clapboard house in Rockford, Michigan. A woman squinting in the summer sun he promised her. He picks up the bar. He has 4 magazines left, 80 rounds of M2AP, 3 grenades, a 1911 with 2 full magazines, a left arm going stiff and getting worse. He has enough. The 90 seconds were not rest. They were calculation. The 4 remaining emplacements are not independent. They are connected. Communication trenches linking them in a rough chain, each position supporting the next in a defensive line that runs northeast to southwest across the crest of the ridge. An assault on any single emplacement from the front will draw fire from the adjacent ones. The standard approach, move, suppress, assault, works when you have a squad. When you are one man, the crossfire equation doesn't solve. But there is a flaw in the design. The communication trenches themselves. Built to move soldiers between positions, and the trenches run at oblique angles to the ridge crest. They are covered at the positions, but between them they are open trenches, 3 feet deep, not much wider, and the Japanese inside them are moving men between emplacements to compensate for the losses they've taken. In the 90 seconds of stillness, Sjogren counted movement. Heard it specifically. The sound of men moving through a trench is different from men moving through jungle, feet on clay, in the scrape of a rifle stock against an earthen wall. They are reinforcing their right flank, pulling men from position 7 on the far northeast to shore up the center where he has already broken through. Which means position 7 is thinned. He goes for the end of the line first. Then he rolls back through the center. He moves. He fires. He drops. He moves again. The position is 40 meters. 30. 20. He hits position 7 from the southeast, from the flank they've just vacated, with 2 full magazines of M2AP on automatic into the corner junctions, then a grenade through the observation slit. The wall comes apart. The position goes silent. He does not slow down. He is in the communication trench before the sound of the grenade has finished echoing. He runs the trench crouched low, the bar forward, and he takes positions 6 and 5 from behind. From the trench entrances that were designed to receive reinforcements, not to stop an assault coming from inside the perimeter. In position 5, a Japanese soldier turns in the trench mouth and they are looking at each other at arm's length. Sjogren fires once with the 1911 because the bar magazine is empty and reloading takes a second he does not have. Position 4, the one with the partial sight line to the hut, is the last one. And before he enters the final assault, he does one thing. He moves to the hut. 20 feet of open ground. He crosses it at a run, reaching the door, pressing himself against the wall beside it. He speaks in Spanish, the language many Filipinos and Negros spoke, the few words he has learned in 3 months on the island. Seguro, seguro, abajo, safe, safe, stay down. A pause, then a woman's voice from inside. Oo, naiintindihan ko. I understand. He goes back to his work. He takes position 4 from the south. 2 grenades, both thrown from 20 yards. He walks into the smoke with the bar on his hip, firing a sustained burst through the dust, and the bar's full automatic voice, 20 rounds in under 3 seconds, the deep rhythmic thunder of .30 caliber AP at close range. Tears through the last emplacement like it was made of paper. Because it was. 1 shot left the last gun, then silence fell on Hill 330. Not slowly, all at once, in a single beat of absolute stillness, the kind that only follows violence that has finally spent itself completely. The jungle had nothing to say. The ridge had nothing to give. John Sjogren stood at the crest of Hill 330 and breathed. Item Company reached the crest of Hill 330 at 14:47 hours, resuming their advance when the radio traffic from the position went quiet and no Japanese fire came to meet them. What they found stopped men who had been in combat for months. E7 prepared fighting emplacements, all destroyed or neutralized. Expended brass from a bar, specifically the dull finish of M2AP casings. Scattered across 300 meters of ridge terrain in precise clusters that mapped the route of the assault. 4 grenade detonations had collapsed sections of the defensive line. 3 of the bamboo and earth walls showed the punch-through pattern of M2AP fired at oblique angles. Holes only made from firing positions no larger than 1 man. In the Japanese garrison, 31 dead defenders. 2 captured, both wounded. Captain Lawson found John Sjogren sitting against the final emplacement wall, bar across his knees, left forearm tied off with a section of his own trouser leg. "How many men?" Lawson asked. "1," said Sjogren. The 40th Infantry Division's after-action report for May 23, 1945 records that the 2 Japanese prisoners initially described multiple attackers. 4 or 5, they insisted, perhaps more. And a weapon that fired from several positions simultaneously. Automatic fire arriving from angles that shouldn't have had a shooter. When they were told it was 1 man with 1 weapon, the interpreter reported a long silence. Then 1 prisoner said something translated as, "The thunder does not come from one place. It moves. That is why we could not find it. Mori no Kaminari, forest thunder." The civilians from the hut were found exactly where Sjogren had told them to stay. Irremedios Villanueva, 34 years old, displaced from her farm 3 weeks earlier when the Japanese built their perimeter around her home. Had her 2 children and 3 other adults sheltering inside. She told the civil affairs officer that a soldier had come to the door during the fighting. That he had told her in broken Spanish she was safe. That she had believed him. Congress awarded John C. Sjogren the Medal of Honor for his actions on Hill 330 on May 23, 1945. The official citation reads, in part, Private First Class Sjogren, armed with a Browning automatic rifle, voluntarily crawled forward under heavy fire and attacked the first of a series of hostile emplacements. Single-handedly, he attacked and destroyed each of the 7 enemy emplacements, killing the 33-man garrison. His outstanding gallantry in action above and beyond the call of duty. He returned to Rockford, Michigan after the war. He was 23 years old. He did not speak about Hill 330 in public for many years. When he was asked, he spoke about the bar with more ease than he spoke about himself. He had understood the weapon in a way that Pacific conditions had refined beyond anything training provided. The M2AP round against bamboo fortifications was not a theory, but an observation that became a method carried for months before Hill 330 gave it somewhere to go. What his assault changed in the tactical picture was documented in subsequent after-action analysis. The capture of Hill 330 opened the right flank of the Japanese defensive line running south, allowing the regiment to advance 3 kilometers before nightfall. An advance stalled for 6 days. The collapse of that flank accelerated American control over central Negros, effectively secured within 2 weeks of Sjogren's assault. 1 American soldier. 7 enemy positions, 31 enemy dead, on 300 meters of ridge that cost a company, and then cost 1 man instead. One of those men. He came to the door while it was still happening. Remedios Villanueva told a civil affairs officer afterward. He told us we were safe. Then he went back and made it true. He was given the wrong numbers. Someone counted campfire smoke and called it intelligence, and 62 men walked into a stream bed built to receive them. That is the war in miniature. The gap between the map and the ground, between what command believes and what the man at the front discovers. That gap has existed in every war ever fought and will exist in every war not yet started. His orders changed when he needed them most. The radio said, "Come back." The mission was officially suspended by 0800, and anything he did after that was not covered by any written order. He made a decision the chain of command had not made for him, and he made it because he was the only one left who could. He found civilians inside the objective, a woman and children with nowhere to go, trapped between 2 machine gun positions. He could have filed them as a complication, a variable in the mission equation. He did not do that. He changed his assault plan, crossed open ground, and told Remedios Villanueva she was safe before he proved it. That cost him time and a wound. He went anyway. For the veterans watching this, you know what that ridge felt like. The moment the order comes to pull back and your body is already past the point where back is the safe direction, the arithmetic of being alone on the wrong side of an objective with no one coming. He did not hesitate. That does not make it simple. It makes it heavier because he knew exactly what he was choosing. For everyone else, John Sjogren was a quiet kid from a small town in Michigan. Not born different, trained, and then tested. What he did on that ridge was not recklessness. It was the final arithmetic of a man given every reason to stop who had one reason not to. A photograph in a breast pocket, a white clapboard house, a woman squinting in the Michigan summer. He promised her he was coming home. He kept it. That is the weight of it. Not the 7 emplacements or the 31 dead or the medal on its ribbon. A man made a promise. The world put everything it had between him and keeping it, and he kept it anyway. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe so you never miss these forgotten stories of extraordinary American courage. Who should we tell next? Drop their name in the comments.